I followed Kardashian and Lewis Hamilton into a hidden estate that night, and what I saw underground still keeps me awake. Labs with people who moved like machines. Contracts worth millions for something they called human evolution. They knew I was coming. They planned it. What I discovered wasn't celebrity gossip. It was a network already controlling powerful people worldwide. Are the stars you follow even fully human anymore? Subscribe now. The invitation arrived on Tuesday with no warning. Plain brown package outside my door. Inside was a black card with gold coordinates and one date, February 1st, midnight. No name, no explanation, just numbers leading to the Calabasas hills. I'm nobody special. Why would anyone invite me to something secret? I checked the location online. What I found made my hands shake. The property records were buried under shell companies with names like Meridian Holdings. The estate sold for $42 million cash in 2019. No mortgage, no public owner listed anywhere. The previous owner disappeared in 2020 without a trace. His family stopped searching after receiving a large settlement. Money made them forget their own son. What kind of power makes that happen? I needed to know more. On January 31st at 3 a.m., my phone lit up. Unknown number. The text read, "You wanted the real story. Come alone. Bring nothing electronic inside." Before I could screenshot it, the message deleted itself automatically. Someone knew I'd been researching celebrity power structures for months. They'd been watching my work. How long had they tracked me? The invitation wasn't random. It was calculated. February 1st came fast. I drove into the hills as sunset turned to darkness, following printed directions. My GPS died exactly 2 miles from the location. No signal, no service, like something was blocking it. The roads wound through empty areas where nobody lived. Fresh tire tracks in the gravel showed expensive vehicles had passed recently. Multiple cars, all heading to the same place. Why this location? What needed this isolation? The iron gate stood wide open when I arrived, like it was expecting me specifically. No guards anywhere, no visible cameras, just that massive gate and a driveway disappearing into trees. The estate beyond looked beautiful at first. Mediterranean architecture, expensive landscaping, perfect maintenance. But something felt wrong. Every single window was tinted completely black. You couldn't see inside at all. What were they hiding in there? A man in black uniform appeared and took my car keys without saying a word. His name tag read Staff 47. Not a name, just a number. He pointed toward the main entrance and walked away. Inside, the marble floors had a strange coating that didn't reflect light properly. The air smelled chemical, like hospitals or labs. Voices echoed from somewhere deep in the building. At least 20 people had already arrived. Who were they? The other guests stood in small groups wearing expensive black clothing. Nobody made eye contact with anyone. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something specific to happen. The atmosphere felt controlled, too formal for any normal party. Then through a doorway I saw them. Kim Kardashian and Lewis Hamilton standing close together, speaking intensely. Neither smiled. They looked like business executives, not celebrities. What business brings these two together secretly? Staff members ushered us into a huge room with 30-foot ceilings. No windows existed anywhere. Hidden light fixtures created strange shadows on the walls. A massive table dominated the center with name cards at specific seats. Mine placed me directly across from where Kim and Lewis would sit. That wasn't accidental. They'd planned exactly where everyone would be positioned. Why did they want me facing them? What were they watching for in my reactions? Kim and Lewis entered together, moving in perfect synchronization without touching each other. Kim's face showed no emotion, completely professional and cold. Lewis scanned every person's face like he was memorizing us. They sat down at exactly the same moment, A screen descended from the ceiling. No presenter appeared, just a voice discussing investment opportunities in emerging technology. The language was vague and coded. Nothing specific mentioned. What were they actually selling? Images flashed across the screen. Laboratories filled with equipment I'd never seen before. Private islands. Detailed blueprints for large facilities. One slide showed a massive compound in the Nevada desert. It stayed visible for exactly 3 seconds, then vanished. Long enough to register, too fast to photograph. The voice mentioned human potential and optimization repeatedly. Kim watched everyone's reactions carefully. Lewis wrote in a notebook without looking down. What were they building? I noticed Kim barely blinked. Maybe once every 2 minutes, when normal people blink 15 times per minute. She kept touching a device on her wrist that wasn't a regular watch. When she spoke, every other person immediately went silent. Lewis was writing backwards in his notebook mirror script. That's an old intelligence technique. Why would a race car driver know that? Why would Kim command this room full of wealthy people? What had I walked into? Someone mentioned the lower facility during a conversation. Kim's jaw tightened instantly. Lewis placed his hand flat on the table, palm down. The speaker immediately changed topics mid-sentence. It was clearly a signal between them. I excused myself to find a bathroom. Down a side hallway, I found a corridor blocked by a chain. The sign read, "Authorized personnel. Biometric access required." I heard machinery humming behind the locked door. What was down there? Every staff member I passed tracked me with their eyes. They all had identical posture and walking patterns. When one spoke into a radio, I heard my exact clothing description broadcast to others. They were monitoring everyone constantly. I returned to the main room quickly. Kim and Lewis were talking privately in an alcove nearby. I moved closer quietly. Kim said, "We need 6 more months before Phase 3. Lewis replied, "The board won't wait." Monaco projections convinced them already. A waiter dropped a folder near my feet. It looked accidental, but felt completely intentional. Inside were financial statements for Meridian Collective. Hundreds of millions in unmarked transactions flowing to worldwide facilities. Project codename, Apex. Before I could read more, the waiter returned and took it without apologizing. But I'd seen enough. This wasn't about fashion or racing. This was something massive and coordinated. What was Project APEX? Why did they let me see this? Think about what you do here, and subscribe. An older woman appeared beside me and whispered urgently, "Leave before the second session starts. Don't go downstairs no matter what they offer you." She disappeared into the crowd before I could ask questions. Kim stood and addressed everyone. We're entering the critical phase now. Those committed understand what's at stake. For those still deciding, you'll see something tonight that changes everything. Lewis added, "The demonstration is prepared below. Voluntary, but opportunity is extremely time-sensitive." They led us to elevators in groups of 5 people. No floor buttons existed, just a key card reader. The descent felt endless, dropping for over a minute straight. We were going deep underground. When doors opened, everything changed completely. The hallway looked nothing like the house above. White sterile walls, LED light strips, security checkpoints every 20 feet. This was a full research facility hidden beneath a celebrity estate. How many people knew this existed beneath Calabasas? Through thick reinforced glass windows, I saw laboratories filled with equipment that didn't look commercial or standard. People in full clean suits worked on devices emitting soft blue light. This was active research happening right now, tonight. We were led to a theater-style room overlooking a chamber below. Kim and Lewis stood at the front, waiting for everyone to find their assigned seats. The room went completely dark, except for lights in the observation chamber. What were they about to show us? Kim spoke first in the darkness. What you're about to witness represents 5 years of intensive development. We're not just investing in technology here. We're investing in human evolution itself. A door opened in the chamber below us. A person walked in, but their movement seemed wrong. Too smooth, too precise, almost robotic. They sat in a chair surrounded by sensor arrays. A helmet descended from above, connecting to ports at the base of their skull. Surgically installed ports. What had they done? Screens around us showed brainwave patterns synchronizing with computer systems in real time. The subject's eyes moved in rapid patterns, accessing and processing information faster than any normal human could. Kim continued calmly. Neural augmentation, not replacement of the brain, but enhancement. Memory storage expanded by factors of hundreds. Processing speed increased exponentially. The human mind fully optimized. Lewis watched monitors. 12 subjects tested successfully, all integrated perfectly. Applications are unlimited for business, leadership, strategy. Someone in our group asked about FDA approval. Kim's smile went ice cold. We operate in international waters jurisdictionally speaking. Regulatory frameworks will adapt to us eventually. Lewis named 3 Forbes 500 CEOs who are already committed partners. He said, "You're here because you've been carefully vetted." This room contains the future leadership class of the world. Minimum investment was $5 million. Returns projected at 2,000% within 3 years. They were recruiting wealthy people to fund human experimentation. Who had already agreed? I stood to leave immediately. Kim's voice cut sharply across the room. Leaving so soon? We haven't discussed the non-disclosure agreements yet. 2 large security personnel moved toward the exits quickly. We were handed 30-page legal contracts. Everything witnessed here tonight is proprietary information. Violations carry minimum $50 million penalties and guaranteed criminal prosecution. They separated us into individual rooms to sign. My room had no windows, 1 locked door, and a camera watching from the corner. I was trapped. What happened to people who refused? I read the contract very carefully. Buried deep in legal language was a clause about voluntary participation in comprehensive assessment protocols. They wanted to evaluate everyone here as potential subjects for augmentation procedures. A technician entered with a tablet computer. Just a brief cognitive assessment. Standard procedure for all potential partners. The questions were designed to map neural patterns and brain function. They were testing us right now. I gave random wrong answers deliberately. The technician frowned but said nothing. Had I failed their test or passed it? The door opened. Lewis Hamilton entered my small room alone. He closed the door carefully and sat across from me. You're the journalist. We know everything. We've known since you received the invitation. This was always about bringing someone exactly like you inside our operation. My blood went completely cold. They'd researched me thoroughly, tracked all my work, planned this specifically. Why me? I asked. He smiled slightly. Because we need documentation that this exists, but only from a completely controlled source. Kim joined us in the room. You want the real story? Here it is. We're building the next evolution of human capability. We have unlimited resources, advanced technology, and complete protection to make this global. She showed me a list on her tablet. Names I recognized immediately. Tech CEOs, political advisors, professional athletes, major entertainers. Already integrated, already enhanced, already operating in positions of serious power. My hands shook. Were they telling the truth? Drop a comment below. How many famous people could actually be enhanced already? Kim continued. You have 3 options tonight. First, write about conspiracy theories, and we'll systematically destroy your credibility completely. Second, write exactly what we need written and receive compensation beyond your imagination. Third, join us. Enhancement isn't just for wealthy clients. We need people in media positions too. Imagine never forgetting any source, processing documents instantly, knowing exactly what story will resonate with audiences. Lewis added, think carefully. How much more effective and successful could you become? Were they enhanced too? Was I talking to altered humans right now? I refused all three options. Kim's expression didn't change at all. Then you'll sign the non-disclosure agreement and leave with absolutely nothing. And you'll be monitored permanently. She said it like discussing weather. Security escorted me back through the facility. I memorized everything possible. Door codes visible on keypads, security camera positions, the elevator's emergency phone number. We walked past labs again. Scientists watched us pass through the glass. Did they know what they were really part of? Did they care about the ethics? Back in the main house, other guests were signing partnership contracts, shaking hands, celebrating their investments. They'd bought in completely. They didn't see what I saw clearly. Or maybe they saw it and simply didn't care about the implications. Money changes people's morality fast. I got my car keys from the same numbered staff member. He handed them over without any facial expression. I drove down the mountain fast, checking mirrors constantly. A black SUV followed at distance. They meant what they said about permanent monitoring. I drove straight home, 3 hours of constantly checking if I was still being followed closely. The SUV disappeared after an hour, but that didn't mean anything. They knew where I lived. They'd known everything about me before I even received that invitation. I arrived home at 4 a.m. and immediately started writing everything down in detail. Encrypted files, distributed across multiple secure cloud locations. I didn't know if I'd ever publish this. But if something happened to me, someone needed to know the truth. The next morning, I received an email from an encrypted address. We trust you'll honor the agreement. Remember, we're always watching you. Attached was a photograph of me taken through my apartment window that same morning. They weren't bluffing about surveillance at all. I closed all my curtains and started researching the names Kim had shown me. 3 had recently given interviews about breakthroughs in their fields. All 3 mentioned enhanced focus and perfect memory. Was that just coincidence or coded signaling? I found a disturbing pattern in their public speech. Certain phrases repeated across different interviews. Optimized thinking, enhanced capability, next-level performance. These weren't normal business expressions. They were signaling to each other publicly. I checked their social media accounts. Kim had posted a photo with 2 of them last month. Lewis had been photographed with another at a Monaco event. They were connected publicly, hiding their network in plain sight. How many others were part of this that I couldn't identify? I started noticing things I'd completely missed before. Certain celebrities and executives always wore long sleeves or high collars, even in summer heat. Were they covering neural ports at the base of their skulls? Some had unexplained gaps in their public schedules, 3 to 4 weeks of no appearances. Recovery time from augmentation surgery? I was seeing patterns everywhere now. Maybe I was becoming paranoid, or maybe I was finally seeing reality clearly. Which was worse for me? 2 weeks after visiting the estate, a package arrived at my door. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a note, consulting fee for your time. Discretion appreciated. No signature. I didn't cash it. This was a test to see if money would keep me quiet, or maybe evidence they could use against me later. I put it in a safety deposit box as proof of contact. They were still watching, still testing my behavior. What were they waiting for? I researched Meridian Collective deeper. The company owned 12 research facilities across 4 different countries, all in locations with minimal government oversight. The Nevada compound I'd seen in their presentation was just one piece. They had operations in international waters, private islands, and special economic zones, places where normal laws didn't really apply. The funding came from tech giants, defense contractors, and private equity firms. This was massive. How had nobody exposed this publicly before? Then I found something that made my blood run cold. 3 journalists had written about neural augmentation technology in the past 5 years. One retracted their entire story, claiming sources were unreliable. Another disappeared while investigating offshore research facilities. The third died in a car accident that police called suspicious but never solved. All 3 had been digging into the same networks I was researching now. Was I next on their list? Should I stop investigating immediately? I couldn't stop. I reached out to a source who worked in venture capital. They'd heard rumors about Meridian Collective for years. Everyone knows something's happening, but nobody talks publicly. The returns are too good. The people involved are too powerful to challenge. They sent me a list of investors. Dozens of names from Fortune 500 companies. This wasn't some fringe operation. This was mainstream money funding human experimentation. Why wasn't anyone stopping this? Where were the regulators? I found patent applications filed by Meridian-linked companies. Neural interface technology, memory enhancement systems, cognitive processing accelerators. The applications were vague enough to get approved, but specific enough to protect their methods legally. They'd been building legal protection for years. The patent dates went back to 2018, a full year before they bought the Calabasas estate. This had been planned long-term. How far back did this really go? Who started it? I noticed Kim and Lewis had both taken mysterious trips in early 2019. Both disappeared from public view for about 3 weeks. Both came back talking about new focus and clarity in interviews afterward. Kim launched 3 successful new businesses that year. Lewis had his best racing season ever. Were they the first celebrity test subjects? Or had there been others before them? I searched for other celebrities with similar patterns. I found 7 more with identical timelines. All successful, all enhanced. Lawyer contacted me unexpectedly. I represent parties interested in your recent research activities. They'd like to meet and discuss mutual interests. I asked who the parties were specifically. That would be discussed at the meeting. I declined immediately. 2 days later, my computer was hacked professionally. Nothing was stolen, but files were opened and read. My research on Meridian, the estate, everything. It was a clear message. They could access anything they wanted any time. Was anything I owned actually private? I started using encrypted communication and secure devices only. I met sources in public places exclusively. I varied my routes and schedules constantly. Basic security protocols, but they made me feel slightly safer. A former tech executive agreed to talk off the record. The augmentation technology works, they said quietly. I've seen demonstrations personally, but the psychological effects aren't fully tested long-term. Some subjects become detached from normal human emotion. They optimize everything, including relationships. What did that mean for enhanced people? The executive continued, they're targeting high performers who already struggle with work-life balance. People who will see enhanced productivity as worth any cost. Once you're augmented, you're dependent on them for maintenance and updates. It's not just technology. It's permanent control. They showed me internal documents about retention protocols. Regular sessions required to maintain the augmentation. Miss too many, and cognitive function degrades rapidly. They were creating permanent dependence. Was anyone actually free once they joined? I tracked financial flows more carefully. Meridian Collective received funding from sources connected to surveillance technology companies and data mining operations. The augmentation wasn't just about enhancing individuals. It was about collecting data from enhanced minds. Everything they learned, saw, or thought could potentially be accessed remotely. They were building a network of human surveillance devices in positions of power. Was privacy even possible anymore? Who controlled the data? I found a whistleblower from one of their research facilities. They agreed to talk anonymously only. The success rate isn't what they claim publicly. For every successful integration, there are 2 or 3 failures. Memory loss, personality changes, some much worse. They don't talk about those cases ever. I asked what happened to the failures. Long silence. Non-disclosure agreements cover that too. But people don't just disappear by choice. My hands shook. How many people had they experimented on? The whistleblower sent me medical records, heavily redacted, but still revealing. Subjects showed permanent brain structure changes within weeks of augmentation. Some positive, some deeply concerning. Long-term effects were unknown because the longest study was only 4 years. They were rolling this out to wealthy clients without knowing what would happen in 10 or 20 years. Were Kim and Lewis aware of the risks? Or were they just as trapped as everyone else who'd been enhanced? I researched the technology itself. The neural interface used principles from brain-computer interfaces combined with advanced nanotechnology. It wasn't complete science fiction. Similar research existed in academic settings, but moved slowly due to ethical oversight. Meridian had no such limitations. They were advancing years ahead of public research. The lead scientist was someone who'd been fired from 3 universities for ethics violations. They'd found the perfect person to do work others refused. What had they promised him? Security around me increased noticeably. I noticed the same cars in my neighborhood. Someone was watching my apartment constantly. I installed cameras and caught footage of people checking my building's entrance. Professional surveillance, not amateurs. I sent copies of everything I gathered to multiple trusted sources, with instructions to publish if anything happened to me. It was the only insurance I had. Would it be enough? Could I actually stop this, or was I just documenting my own investigation? Kim posted on social media about a new business venture. The comments were full of support, but I noticed something strange. Several accounts used similar language patterns, all praising her enhanced focus and vision. Odd accounts? Or augmented individuals signaling their membership. I checked Lewis's posts. Same pattern. They were communicating in plain sight, using coded language their network would recognize. How many people scrolling past these posts had any idea what they were really seeing? A former Meridian employee reached out through encrypted channels. They're planning expansion. 50 new subjects by end of year. They're targeting influencers, politicians, media executives, people who shape public opinion. I asked why they were telling me. Because someone needs to know before it's too late. Once enough key people are augmented, they control the narrative completely. Democracy doesn't work when decision makers are literally connected to the same network. Was this already happening? I investigated the board members of Meridian Collective. Most were hidden behind shell companies, but I identified 5. 2 had government intelligence backgrounds. 1 worked in defense technology. Another ran a major social media platform. The 5th was a neuroscientist who'd published papers on collective consciousness. They weren't random investors. Each brought specific expertise to building a networked enhanced population. This wasn't about helping individuals. This was about control at scale. What was their real end goal? The neuroscientists' papers described theoretical frameworks for linking human minds through technology. Shared memory, distributed processing, collective decision-making. It read like science fiction, but his credentials were completely legitimate. If Meridian was following his research, they weren't just enhancing individuals. They were trying to create a hive mind among the most powerful people in the world. Connected, coordinated, operating with shared goals. Could they actually achieve that? What would that mean for the rest of us? Share your thoughts in the comments. I found property records for facilities in Singapore, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands, all purchased by Meridian-linked entities between 2019 and 2023, all in locations known for banking privacy and minimal regulation. They were building global infrastructure, hidden across jurisdictions where they couldn't be easily investigated. Each facility likely doing different aspects of research and augmentation. How many people had already gone through these locations? The scale was bigger than I'd imagined. This was worldwide. A pattern emerged in celebrity behavior I'd never noticed. Certain A-listers only appeared at events together now, like they were coordinating schedules. They invested in the same companies, supported the same causes, used similar talking points in interviews. It could be coincidence. Or it could be networked individuals acting with shared intelligence. Kim and Lewis were both part of this circle. So were at least a dozen others I'd identified. Were they thinking independently anymore? I tracked their public appearances over the past year. The pattern was clear. They met privately before major decisions, then announced similar choices publicly. They supported each other's projects immediately without hesitation. They defended each other against criticism using identical arguments. This wasn't normal celebrity friendship. This was coordinated behavior suggesting shared thinking. Were their minds actually connected? Or were they just following orders from someone higher up in the network? I found a research paper from 2017 by the neuroscientist on Meridian's board. It described technology for synchronizing brainwave patterns between multiple subjects. The conclusion suggested this could enable unprecedented coordination and shared processing capability. Paper was withdrawn from publication after peer review. Too controversial, too ethically problematic. But Meridian had clearly continued the research privately. They'd built what the academic world rejected. Were Kim and Lewis's brains synchronized? I noticed something in recent interviews with Kim and Lewis. When asked about future plans, they both paused for exactly 2 seconds before answering. The same pause length, the same timing. That's not natural. That's processed response. Were they accessing shared information during that pause? Were they checking with the network? I reviewed dozens of interviews. The pattern repeated. 2-second pause, then perfectly articulated answer. They weren't thinking independently anymore. They were connected. A neuroscientist I consulted off the record reviewed my findings. If what you're describing is real, they've achieved brain-to-brain interface. The pauses suggest processing time to access networked information. The coordinated behavior suggests shared decision-making protocols. This is beyond current public technology by at least a decade. They asked if I had proof. I had patterns, behaviors, documents, but no smoking gun. Would anyone believe this without harder evidence? I decided to test it. I published a small article online about neural augmentation technology, mentioning no names or specifics. Within hours, 3 verified celebrity accounts posted about conspiracy theories and misinformation. All 3 were people I'd identified as potentially enhanced. All 3 used similar phrasing. They'd responded in coordination. The network was monitoring, and it was defensive. I'd touched a nerve. What would they do next? I doubled my security. 2 days later, my article was removed from the platform. Violation of community guidelines regarding medical misinformation. But I'd made no medical claims. I'd discussed technology. Someone with influence had flagged it. Someone with connections to the platform. I checked who was on the social media company's board. One of Meridian's investors was there. The network had reach into major platforms. They could control information flow. How much of what we see online is already filtered by them? I realized I was fighting something bigger than I understood. This wasn't just about Kim Kardashian or Lewis Hamilton. They were visible parts of something vast. A network of enhanced individuals in positions of power, coordinated, protected, and growing. They controlled money, media, technology, and access. What chance did one person have against that? But someone had to try. Someone had to document this. Maybe that's why they'd invited me in the first place. I'm still being watched. My life is still monitored, but I've documented everything. If something happens to me, others will know. The estate is still operating. Kim and Lewis are still recruiting. The network is still growing. Maybe you've already seen them in ways you didn't recognize. Maybe some of your favorite celebrities are already enhanced. Maybe the world is already controlled by them. Or maybe I'm just seeing patterns that aren't there. What do you think? Subscribe to follow what happens next.